To this story now, the Municipal Demarcation Board is conducting an awareness drive to educate on the ward delimitation process. The demarcation for the wards occurs every 5 years, preceding the local government elections. The awareness drive is held in all municipalities, targeting traditional leaderships, ward councillors and ward committees as well. So what exactly does this process entail? Let's now bring in the chairperson of the Municipal Demarcation Board, Thabo Manyoni. Chair, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. Explain to us where we are now with the delimitation of the wards in terms of that process, and by when should you be done with the process ahead of the 2026 elections?
Thank you, and thanks to the viewers this morning. Let me indicate that we have learned from the past history that our communities, of course, have a limited understanding of what these processes are entailing. So at the moment, we have started with the awareness campaign where we are trying to educate communities about exactly what these processes will all be about, so that when we are having now what we are calling draft wards and start the processes, they can make meaningful inputs in that regard. At the moment, it is just an awareness campaign, an educational sort of drive about the processes. I must indicate that we are waiting for the minister to come with a formula which will then determine the number of councillors in each and every municipality. We then use that for our processes of getting to make sure that we have drafts of wards per municipality. So I must indicate, although this process is mainly meant, as you said earlier, it is mainly meant for elections, I think the drafters of the Act were having in mind that you would need to have a sort of an equitable distribution of potential voters in each and every ward in a municipality. In other words, let's make a crazy example that you would not want to have in one ward 50,000 voters in a voting station, and in another ward you only have 500 voters. So to have that equitable share, we are using this formula to sort of equally redistribute. Obviously it won't be equal, but equitably redistribute voters within a municipality. That's the main exercise of this. And of course, we know that it doesn't end there. Municipalities also use wards for their budgetary service delivery implementation points. So these processes, we are trying to make sure that they also be aware that there might be areas where you would have changes, and they also then have to allocate their budgets accordingly. But mainly, we are trying to make sure that we get the processes, get the wards right, and remember that the number of voters have been increasing over the years. So that also makes it a little bit difficult to retain the wards as they are. You end up having to add 1 or 2 wards in a municipality. And in that regard, of course, you affect other wards that have been in existence. So those are the things that we'll be dealing with.
Yeah. So with that, looking at that equitable share that you speak about and the distribution of that, which data does the Demarcation Board rely on to determine, once the formula is out, how many voters should be in a ward? And I ask this also on the basis of the status a census, which has shown that there has been an undercounting. Does that affect your work at all?
Not really. At the moment, in terms of the Act, I must indicate we use the statistics that we are getting from the IEC in terms of the previous elections. In other words, for this specific process, we'll be using the voters' roll that the IEC used for our national elections. So we would then be saying These are the potential voters that we are having at the moment. Of course, there would be any increase practically, but that's what we are using. We are using the previous voters' roll to determine how the process will unfold for the next coming elections. And in so doing, we would then, we have what, in terms of the minister's formula, what we call a norm. We take the number of voters. Let's say in a municipality we had 20,000 voters, and the municipality is having 20 wards. In other words, the norm would be 1,000 people per ward to make that 20,000 in that municipality. So we will be using that to build those wards. Every ward must basically have at least, on average, 1,000 people. Of course, there is a deviation there of about 15% below or above. In other words, 850 or 1,150 voters would constitute a legitimate ward in that regard. So we use basically stats in terms of the previous elections, in terms of those registered voters.
In the statement that you issued, there is a column that speaks to the deferred municipal redetermination proposals, which will require further research, public consultation and/or stakeholder engagement. I want to quickly zoom in on the one in KwaZulu-Natal, and this is in reference to a new metropolitan that could be created in KwaZulu-Natal. What does this mean? Does this mean that for the upcoming 2026 local government elections, we could see a new metro, or does it mean that it will only be discussed after the local government elections?
We have started the process. I think it's about Mhlatuzi also, Sunduzi.
Yeah.
But we have started the process. We are doing intense research in that regard. And I must indicate, yes, a decision will be taken before our local government elections. But the implementation thereof, either it will be exactly immediately after elections, in other words, when we start with the new municipalities or new councils in that regard, or the MEC with the minister and the Minister of Finance might decide that, no, let us postpone the implementation of this, depending, of course, on a number of factors. But as far as we are concerned as the Demarcation Board, we would have finalized the processes before our local government elections 2026.
Thank you so much for your time. That is the chairperson of the Demarcation Board, which means that we could see a new metro being created in the country, bringing the total number of metros to 12, 2 in KwaZulu-Natal, if the process is indeed successful.